Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the NRG Series in Madison. I'm Mason Clark, joined by my co-host here, Drake Sasser, and we are back for the last NRG trial of the 2023 year. It's been a wild year, so let's check out our players to watch leaderboard because all these players are live for our end of the year championship series event. And Drake, it's been a wild one. As we see here, Derek Davis, Benjamin Ungar, Cliff Boyardee, Ryan Hayes, A. Adams, all 2-1, Chris Smith, Theo Jung, and Will Kowalczyk, all 1-2. Now, no one's quite dead yet, but we were talking before the show, Drake, and you were mentioning Chris Smith might be in a bit of a bad position here.
Yeah, a lot of players beneath Chris on the leaderboard doing a lot of winning in this event. I mean, including the head-to-head. We got to see that earlier, Chris versus Cat. Of course, Cat did win advance. Chris went 1-1, just lost again. This is a big problem for Chris potentially. Not only do you kind of falling behind as far as being able to pick up your own points, but the people behind you are picking up points by just winning a lot. And if they have really good weekends, especially all three of them, you might actually just end up on the outside looking in when you look like you were solidly soft-locked.
Mm-hmm. And that is just something that can happen in these events, like you mentioned all day today. Every single one matters. One single tournament can shake things up. We saw yesterday how 5 people top 8. One of our at-large people got 9th. One of the people who was in the running won, so they punched their ticket. That opened up a new slot. All these things are really, really anxiety-inducing if you're a Chris Smith fan or him proper. We are going to be having a fun feature match for you this round. We're going to have Zoe Riederman, someone we saw in our Player Championship last year, playing the Boros Convoke deck. So we're going to hop on down to that in just a second. But we also have some other exciting decks for you here today because Pioneer is really a diverse format, Some would say maybe even too diverse. There's so much going on. But it is really cool and a very fun format to watch. It may be a little stressful to prepare for.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And we've seen multiple different decks to your point. So we've seen multiple different decks on stream even today, as Zoe's going to start things off very quickly with all an Epicure and off of Inspiring Vantage. You see the Jegantha there over there in the Companion Zone. Kind of really one of the only Jegantha decks left in Pioneer. Companion's, of course, a big part of the entire format. We see Karugas and Yorians and all the like, but of course no Luris. That one's out of here. Banned. See you later. But do have a Jegantha deck present as well. Just a tapped Blood Crypt, it looks like, for Joseph Marden on Rakdos midrange. Going to pass it back to Zoe pretty quickly. Potential to have a really big turn here if Gleeful Demolition is in hand. And we do have a Convoke creature. Looks like we may not have a white Convoke creature, though, so we can't actually put the Loxodon in play very easily this turn. But we can get the new card, Warden of the Inner Sky, involved. And that allows a Scry 1 to happen thanks to the Blood token, the Ornithopter, and the Warden itself. Get to do some beatdowns with Voldaren Epicure. This allows you to kind of use your resources from permanents that would otherwise be summoning sick. Get a look at this one, a rare, 1-mana rare from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, little human soldier 1/2. Get to put counters on it by tapping 3 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control. Summoning sick or not, gets counters and then eventually becomes flying and vigilant as Blood Tithe Harvester added to the mix for Marden.
Warden the Inner Sky is such a strong card. I wanted to highlight sort of what you're saying with that, Drake. Just 1-mana cards in general, such a low bar to be strong. This has so much smoothing to the deck and allows you to sort of play these normal games that you want to play, and curve out. And then if you start to flood out, well, you fix that and you actually are making a sink that can start hitting people. And the fact you can do things like, this Ornithopter, this Blood, and this Voldaren Epicure means you get a lot of scrying going on. I think what we're going to see Zoe do here is maybe activate the Warden, get it bigger, then Gleeful Demolition, one of these artifacts, and then put the Loxodon into play. We saw Zoe last year do really well at a lot of our events by sort of learning one deck and sort of mastering it, right? And sort of understanding all the ins and outs. I know Zoe personally, she's been working on this deck a lot right now and has, been playing it nonstop on Magic Online. So this is sort of her new, hey, I think this deck is the deck, and it just has such broken draws. And she also loves these aggressive decks.
Yeah, I mean, some great new pickups, too. We called out Warden in the Inner Sky just there. Also picked up Imodane's Recruiter, kind of the card actually picked up as, the best card in the Wells of Eldraine limited format. So it chops in other competitive settings, but actually finding a home here as well. As you mentioned, here's everything being convoked for the Venerated Loxodon, which is actually going to put that key third counter on the Warden in the Inner Sky. Now has Flying and Vigilance, although his tap can't get busy quite yet. But this is kind of what made this deck so scary. You talk about new decks coming out, people start freaking out. Right now, Discover's all the talk. This was the talk of kind of yesterday. the Boros Convoke deck, thanks to Venerated Loxodon, all named Convoke, given all the Convoke creatures it plays, namely Venerated Loxodon and Knight-Errant of Eos, that allow you to get paid out for Gleeful Demolition and your Voldaren Epicures, all your cards, just put a bunch of game objects in play. And game objects does Zoe have, as here's another Blood Tithe Harvester. Going to add another blood token to the field. And we're going to go ahead and immediately sacrifice our other Blood Tithe Harvester that is not summoning sick to pick off the Venerated Loxodon. But honestly, it's just kind of stemming the bleeding a little bit. There's still a ton of power in play.
Yeah, and that is part of why this matchup is so good for Boros Convoke, especially in game ones. Your spot removal just isn't that good because, look, yeah, you answered the 4/4, but we still put 5 power among other creatures on the battlefield. And now you're going to see Zoe play a little bit to the board and actually just scry up a little bit more with this Enter the Sky, make sure we find our cards that matter, and just hit for a ton.
Yeah, and that seems to be exactly what we're reaching for right away. Going to get another counter on this flying Vigilant Warden to the Inner Sky. And you mentioned this card's really powerful. It certainly looks at now a 5-power flying creature already, and still plenty of other things we want to tap if that's the angle we want to go. You can also just attack with the pile of creatures. It kind of allows you to, in one card that you won't mind playing anyway, it's 1 mana, do the go big plan. Something this deck is notoriously pretty bad at. Very good at going wide with a bunch of these creatures, as you're seeing here, but going big, a little bit more challenging. This card able to get it done very easily with some scry action to smooth things along the way. As here comes a big attack. Each of these creatures 2 power except for the Voldaren Epicure, and of course the flying Vigilant 5-power creature. Attack for 6 plus 5 is 11 plus 2 is 13 plus 1 is 14. Attack for 14, gonna do some blocking. A good block on Giant Killer there. Still going to take a pile of damage, and facing down lethal is Joseph Marden. Going to go ahead and get rid of that Thoughts. He's not interested in casting that one. Needs a big turn here and does not have it. Just picks it up.
Yeah, and you saw this from Zoe. We did kind of have, we had 1 Convoke creature, but didn't really stick around. And Warden the Inner Sky just got so big. And notice how it doesn't need to be its own counters, right? It works with Venerated Loxodon, and it's became this huge vigilant threat, and also set Zoe up for future turns. Let's say Joseph stuck something like a Shieldred, right? And he wasn't just dead on board still. Well, Zoe's just going to scry a bunch and smooth the draw, and this matchup went from good, I think, to great for this Boros Convoke deck.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw that, especially in game number 1, where, Rakdos may not have the tools to answer that many creatures. So with that, let's actually take a look at the sideboard that Joseph Marden has. Gonna be looking for sweepers. Those are going to be the things that are going to catch our eye as far as being able to improve the matchup. So we get to start that off right with 2 Hidetsu Consumes All, 2 copies of Duress, 2 Go Blank, 2 Kolaghan's Commands, 2 Extinction Events, 1 The End, 1 Invoke Despair, 1 Pithing Needle, and 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse. What do you like here?
I really like the Hidetsu Consumes All, basically a 3-mana Wrath for most of the cards in Zoe's deck. I really like the Extinction as well. A lot of these things are odd. You got a lot of 1-drops and the 5-drop Convoke creatures. There are a decent amount of evens too, between 0s and a couple 2s this deck normally plays. So a card that typically not going to be a straight Wrath. Neither of these cards normally are, but are going to clean the battlefield up a lot, and something that you definitely want. I think cards like Thoughtseize are actually kind of nice in this matchup, where they can pick apart our synergies, make sure our opponent can't convoke stuff out. So cards like Shieldred's Edict, these Edict effects aren't going to do very much. I kind of expect that to go the way of the Dodo a little bit here. Croc's a very similar space.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, the sweepers, huge pickups, access to at least 4. Kolaghan's Command maybe can do some other things if you're into the market for that. But like you said, those big 4, and Thoughtseize, of course, to pick off the powerful leftovers that would otherwise recover. Makes a lot of sense to me. Let's take a look at Zoe's deck, what we are working with. Remember, we do have the Jegantha Companion to consider. All right, and we got 4 copies of Forge Devil, 3 copies of Wedding Announcement, 2 Rending Volley, 2 Red Cap Melee, 1 Kutzil's Flanker, 1 Jegantha, 1 Redain, God of the Worthy, and 1 Get Lost. What do you like here?
So Kutzil's Flanker, which great job, yeah, Drake. This is a card that, if it's a weird one, but basically it's 3 mana, and then when it enters the battlefield, you choose one. You put +1/+1 counters on this creature for each creature left the battlefield this turn. That's the main thing that's going to be happening here. With this, if your opponent wraths you, you can play this to recoup. It's very strong against Thing in the Ice. It's very good against Supreme Verdict. I imagine that card's going to come in here. And then obviously, Wedding Announcement is just the go-to card for these white decks against the Rakdos deck. We've seen it time and time again for a year and a half now. You just try and grind them out. They get a bunch of bodies. Everything's bigger. I imagine these cards are going to be coming in. I can see a world of Get Lost comes in too if you're maybe afraid of something like Shieldreds, etc. Kind of depends on how Zoe wants to go about things. I know some people like Ornithopter get cut in this matchup because, it's sort of a high synergy card. Your opponent's breaking up synergies. Zoe does have a couple of cards like Heartflame Duelist that I would say are not traditional. Typically, people have been liking either Regal Bunnycorn or Thalia, but a card that is, pretty nice. Just a 2-mana 3/1 that has the ability to deal 3 damage in the adventure half is nice in this deck. Having another removal spell off Imodane's Recruiter is nice, and she has 2 of those and 2 Giant Killers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And maybe this is some respect to the Discover deck, being able to pick off the one that you need to interact with early in the Geological Appraiser. That's kind of the one that you need to go after, and maybe that's what you're using for your slot instead of Thalia. Not sure. I imagine that's kind of what that flex slot is actually for, and however you choose to go about it might still be up in the air. But like we mentioned, this Boros Convoke deck, kind of relatively new to the format, but also just been getting a lot of recent developments as well. The Imodane's Recruiter and Warden in the Inner Sky, both available in this deck in high numbers, and Heartflame Duelist, actually a relatively new card as well. So even though this deck's relatively new, it has kind of like an established look that it gravitated towards, and now we're seeing a lot of upgrades made that still work under the Giganta Companion. Impressive stuff, and it certainly looked good there in game 1 for Zoe, as we start out the same way as we did last game. Tap Blood Crypt for Marden. Over to Zoe we go. Untapped Sacred Foundry, ready to get busy.
Everyone's favorite content creator, Zoe, with the Voldaren Epicure on turn 1. Look at all those tokens she has color coordinated ready to go. I was wondering if this were.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think she has orange for the artifacties, and then yellow for the goblins, and then white for the soldiers.
Well done. Honestly, I respect it a lot. I wish more people were efficient, and especially with decks that make a lot of tokens like Zoe's. Really appreciate it. As Marden also produces a blood token off Blood Type Harvester. Well, Zoe says, I'll raise you a clue token in the form of Thraben Inspector. Gleeful Demolition, going to get rid of that blood token. Here comes 3 creatures. Thraben Inspector representing white mana for a Convoke creature. If we have a Convoke creature, it's go time right now. And the way Zoe's moving, right now.
Yeah, you saw Joseph nod his head I got this Adeptus Consumes All. I'm just looking to be a 4/4. Yeah, I'm dead.
Yeah, so the current mana cost on that thing is 5. All right. Okay. No problem.
We saw Get Lost actually get grabbed there as one of Zoe's cards. So Zoe does want to have that answer to Shieldred. One thing, by the way, I wanted to say really quickly here is I was curious how Zoe would appreciate the Geological deck, like the Discover deck. She has no Rolling Vortexes in her deck. That's kind of the go-to card these days for stopping it. I think Zoe's plan is just, I'm going to kill him, which I think is a pretty good plan.
Yeah, always a good plan, and certainly part of the plans of this deck. Resolute Reinforcements, Ornithopter. Let's see if she's interested in playing the Ornithopter. You mentioned Hidetsu Consumes All as a card you need to think about. We'll see we got the checklist cards. Here's the Blight Step Pathway. Going to be played on the front half. Let's see if there is that powerful Saga. Gonna need it here. I mean, this is part of the power of Convoke too. Even though sweepers are good against them, you have to have them. And Joseph definitely does. Hidetsu Consumes All coming down. No responses from Zoe. That's going to clean up all these game objects except the Knight-Errant of Eos, which is still a pretty big 4/4, but not nearly as threatening as what we were facing down previously. Get a good look at this mythic saga from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. First chapter there, of course, the one we're interested in. Destroy each non-permanent mana value 1 or less. Get some exiling of the graveyards, and like the Neon Dynasty sagas are wont to do, flips into a creature. 3/3. Attacks. There you go. Look at that trample. Beatdowns.
If you do 10 damage with it and 1 attack, you win the game, Drake.
Sure. I mean, you probably win the game anyway, Mason. I don't know why that. What's the flavor text for?
How about winning the game with another Knight-Errant of Eos here for Zoe? She just put a whole bunch of creatures on the board, all with 0 and 1 mana.
Recovered. I mean, we knew about the Ornithopter. We knew about Resolute Reinforcements. That's 3 bodies. Turns out we had Warden in the Inner Sky 2.
And we have another Knight-Errant. We could do it again. We could go. We could run it back.
we sure. Comboing off is what we're doing. And Zoe interested in comboing off, as here's another Knight-Errant of Eos. Giant Killer picked up as well. So 2 cards for the trouble. Immediately recovered 2 4/4s. Of course, the Resolute Reinforcements, Ornithopter, all that kind of stuff. Not worth much, but Warden in the Inner Sky, another card we're seeing in play again. Going to be able to make use of those, even though they don't attack and block very well right now. Still not useless. As we go back to Marden, who's once again facing down a pile of creatures.
And this is why the matchup can be kind of tough, right? Marden has stuff like Shieldred that if we get on the battlefield, it can stabilize some hard to attack through. We have these sweepers that can do stuff, right? But Zoe also has these draws that can just power through these sort of things, and you need to have cards like that. Your general game plan is just not that good against them. And, players are like, oh, but the Convoke deck only has a few strong cards. It's like, well, that's how decks work. Sometimes they have lots of synergy pieces, and then there's something strong. The Rakdos deck typically pretty good at breaking those apart, but when you're getting chip shot the whole time, it's much harder to hold them.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of decks built around synergy only have a few strong cards and do a lot of winning. As here's sweeper number 2. That's going to be Extinction Event. This one can name odd and do a lot of cleanup, but not totally. We still going to have some things left behind as we see Marden do a little brief consideration. Not sure.
Look at Zoe's face. She's like, "What are you gonna do? You gonna name odd? You gotta name odd."
I mean, it's only naming even just to clean up 3 things or whatever, right? We got to name. We're naming.
Oh,
we named even.
Okay, so to me, Joseph has to have another Extinction Event. That's what this says. Joseph knows Zoe has another Knight-Errant of Eos in hand.
And a Giant Killer.
And a Giant Killer. So Joseph's like, oh no, silly old me. I left you with all these odd cards. It'd be a shame if you were to draw more cards. And I'm curious if someone like Zoe, who's typically very heads up about like, what's the worst that can happen to me? And how can I play around that? We might just see her be like, hey, buddy, attack for 9. You're at
crack
10.
for 9.
Go.
Thanks for sharing. Here's an attack for 9. I'm gonna buy Jegantha or whatever. Use my mana. Yeah, here we go. Crack. All right. See you later. Crack for 8. We're gonna hold the other card back. Okay, maybe just interested in refilling the hand a little bit and kind of commit the resources because of course if you commit 2 creatures, you get the rebag back on the Knight-Errant of Eos. So let's have a look. See wedding announcement among the mix. Get lost. Ooh, Venerated Loxodon. Looks like only 2 options in general. Right, Resolute Reinforcements can't get the Loxodon because we only convoked for 2, didn't do for the full 5. Resolute Reinforcements the only pickup, and now if there actually is another Extinction Event, I mean things are covered, and I think that gets rid of the Hidetsu Consumes All flip as well, so the board's gonna be completely clear.
Yeah, I kind of this play I think is pretty reasonable. I really did like your line of just pick up the Jegantha, which is by the way draw a card, right? So you could have still drawn cards, and then just be like Extinction Event, hey, what are you gonna do? But if Joseph doesn't have it, Zoe is in a commanding position, and you see her kind of say something to him like, "You got it," like what do you have? Because if you don't have it, where you're playing to,
if you don't have it, you're just dead. There's no but like you said, like we're in the 3-0 bracket. There's no way you're just like oopsie poopsie, right? Like named even, all the big creatures in play are odd.
Also, Drake, you and I know this for sure, right? It could be a situation where Joseph's like, I can't win unless I draw the Extinction Event. Like Joseph might just have a bad hand to be like, listen. Anyway. Yeah, like if I'm going to win, you're going to need to put all the things in play. So I'm just going to try and put everything into play and hope it's enough, And if I draw something like Shieldred, maybe I can stabilize for a turn,
Well, we are going to go ahead and Bone Crusher Giant away the Warden, put in a 4/3. That's going to do a good job of blocking. So we do have kind of a blocking strategy lined up. Not lethal right now. The Giant Killer can get involved in the tapping. Giant Killer tapping a Giant.
Strategy lined up.
I mean, look, there's attacking strategies, which Zoe is certainly in the market for, and there's blocking strategies, which Marden is certainly in the market for as well. Giant Killer going to do the very flavorful tapping of the Giant. Chump block from the flip side of Hidetsu Consumes All, which I'll learn the name of eventually, but today may not be that day.
Hidetsu.
Hidetsu what? It's not actually Hidetsu. They're all like shadows, reflections, or whatever. Whatever. Marden did not draw the second Extinction Event, like you said. Might need to draw that. Extends the hand, and Zoe dominating 2-0, and then. I mean that's that was a blistering fast matchup and kind of not what we're used to seeing. We've been seeing a lot of Phoenix, a lot of Zori's Control, a lot of Rakdos midrange. You get the impression that Pioneer is just like a slow format. Stuff doesn't happen fast. That is not true. And in the case of Zoe, she has got plenty of time before the next round.
It's not a Zori's Control. This is a Zoe Control. She attacks the life total, controls it, kills them, gets it over with. Yeah. A common mistake to understand. No, but it was a great job there by Zoe. And sort of showing why this deck is so strong. It's funny. Before the Geological Appraiser deck was found, I was kind of like, well, this deck is like the deck in Pioneer. It's obviously so good. It's the thing that people can respect. And we saw in RC Dallas in the United States how everyone came for it. And with all the hate, it had like a 49% win rate. But I think people often forget is like, wait, everyone was targeting that deck and had a 49% win rate. That's kind of insane, actually.
Right.
And now, as we're seeing players have sort of forgotten about it, it sort of surged up, got those increased things as well. And we're seeing this real dynamic, right, in Pioneer, where one of the Boros decks is always a good choice. If you're playing Boros Heroic or Boros Convoke, one of those is a nice choice. And the nice part is the cards don't overlap. Like Rending Volley is like not actually that good against Convoke. It's fine. You're happy to have it, but it's great against Heroic, right? And these big sweepers are not good against Heroic. So the Heroic and Convoke, if you're like a Sacred Foundry main, you're actually eating things up in Pioneer right now because you have so much good game against everything going on. I think it's something that's underappreciated at the format, just how good the Sacred Foundry decks are.
Oh, definitely. When people are talking about the best decks in the format, very rarely do people point to these kinds of decks because they do win inconsistently, right? When you're not viewing it as an aggregate, like either you're doing this or this, and like together they kind of make up the Sacred Foundry strategies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're only looking at them in isolated events. And like you said, when Boros Convoke's targeted, it doesn't do a lot of winning. The same is certainly true for Heroic. And when as a result, the decks that continue to put up that don't have that kind of split variety or that split incentive, like the Rakdos decks, you get the impression that's the shape of the format. Zoe, I mean, I think made a great call here. I mean, we're going to get a chance to talk to her here in just a moment, but I think made a great call in exactly what you said, right? Everyone's targeting these Appraiser decks, these Discover decks with cards that Convoke does not care about. Nice Dranith or whatever. Like, okay, for sure. And, able to show up and just lay the smackdowns. These people showing up wanting to just play blue light control and counter spells. Okay, what do you do? Counter my 1/1 for 1? Cool.
Well, you know what? We have our favorite content creator, Zoe Riederman, in the booth. Let's jump down to her and see how Zoe's doing. Zoe, how you doing today?
I'm feeling pretty good. About the same pace as yesterday, but like we're gonna try to keep it together,
Nice. So I know you've been playing a lot of this Boros Convoke deck. What are kind of your thoughts about it, especially, with the new Discover deck entering the format? Because we noticed, a lot of players were playing things like Rolling Vortex maybe to get a little bit of edge. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like your game plan is kill them.
My game plan is to get them dead, but also I have interaction like in the main deck and the sideboard that kill either the creature or the what's it called? The Planeswalker in the Discover deck. And I have found that that's a lot better than like putting a permanent into play, because like the Quintorius deck, they have Leyline Binding. They're gonna answer your threats. So just putting on a clock and then holding up the removal. Like if they clear my board, great, I can rebuild. If they try to kill me, they're dead.
It seems to be working for you.
Well, something I want to highlight about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I haven't run into the Discover deck yet, so we don't know. But
yeah, I was gonna ask about that. It's like, how do you like your asymmetry there? Not just against the Discover deck, but against the decks actually coming to battle the Discover deck. Mason and I were talking before we had a chance to come to you about how people are kind of targeting that and focused on that, not so much the Convoke deck anymore, where that was not the case a few months ago. I think you're doing a really smart thing, leveraging people's attention being on the Discover deck. So I kind of want to highlight that. The blue light controls, people trying to counter stuff, Supreme Verdict stuff, as well as Discover decks. What was your strategy registering Boros Convoke and how you built your deck?
I just kind of registered this deck because I had been playing it before the Discover deck was a thing, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to adapt. So I didn't really take any real considerations in deck building other than, like, how do I adapt to the Discover deck? Because I was just like, I'm going to play this. I bought the cards. Here we are. It's fun. I like to attack. It's been a long time since I've just, like, turned them sideways, but...
Nice.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff. Yeah, I love it. I love it. You are someone that I think very good at adopting a deck and kind of getting very, very good at it. Excited to see you continuing that strategy here, and a great start. I mean, 4-0, an awesome start to your day here.
Thanks.
Yeah, but before we let you go and get have some fun with your friends there, what is the matchup you're most afraid to run into as Boros Convoke? What's the one if you could have a hall pass and dodge it one time? What would you take?
Angels.
Nothing. Zoe's unbeatable. Angels. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Unbeatable. Terrible matchup.
All I'm saying is everyone says that. Everyone you talk to them, they're like, I don't think I can beat the Angels deck, but no one pulls the trigger. That's all I'm saying.
No one plays the Angels deck.
Yeah. I also think blue-white's a pretty bad matchup, especially the blue-white Lotus deck, but like I played blue-white in rounds 1 and 2 and I just beat them, so it's like, who knows?
Just kill them.
Sure.
Just kill them. They can't beat that strategy.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't realize they were going to play against Zoe, and that was the problem. You see the differential there. Zoe, thank you so much for taking some time to sit down with us. Hopefully see you more later in the day. Go have some fun with your friends. We're going to go get you some more feature match action here. So we do have a backup match that's still going. I think we're going to cut down to that right now after we come to here in the booth. And yeah, you heard it from Zoe. It might not be a great matchup, but one of the things that people often underestimate in Magic, Drake, is the low fail rate on creatures. If I just put things in play and attack you, your stupid Teferi deck will just die sometimes, and like that happens.
When you talk about the difference, it can be hard to really solidify how good or bad someone is at Magic. When you talk a lot about skill differences in players, especially when you want to see it really widened, you immediately highlight that the best players in Magic like to attack. And Zoe, certainly someone that likes to attack. No surprises here, doing a lot of winning here and other places, and even here today. Attacking turns out to be pretty good in Magic. Well, it sounds like the backup's ready, so I think we should be able to dive right into that. And here is maybe a familiar face if you've been familiar with the coverage at all, including paper coverage or text coverage, however you want to say it. Fletcher Johnson won yesterday. Punched the ticket in the championship. Here doing a bunch of winning today. Having a great weekend. Playing Lotus Field combo today. Played Scam yesterday against Zach Cavers on Boros Heroic, a Sacred Foundry strategy, as you were just calling out, Mason. This one, very different in shape, though, with Monastery Swiftspear here on turn 1. And we'll see if turn 2 holds any more action.
Definitely.
Let's start for Fletcher. It looks like 2 lands, no Sylvan Scrying, beatdowns for 1, no pump at all. Interested in committing another threat.
Illuminator Virtuoso is not the card you want to see if you're Fletcher Johnson. Didn't even cast Impulse there.
Yeah, no Impulse at all. Interested in saving that one, maybe taking more draw steps. Did play the Lotus Field, but I mean, being completely shields down in the face of the Virtuoso. That card has double strike.
Hey, Drake, I know why. We have a little bit of that card can't, other lane can't produce blue. That's why. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm not familiar with the special version.
I wasn't either. That's on me. Your job is to look pretty. My job is to know the special version.
Well, it's my job to know what it is, and I just don't. So write that down somewhere.
By the way, Fletcher might be dead.
I think Fletcher is just very likely to be dead.
Because, all right, so you connive every time you target. This spell puts the monstrous roll, which is +1/+1 in trample. Plus it gives +2/+0. That's a Lorenz escape, so that is going to only give indestructible or hexproof. I think I might be.
Well, we get the connive, so we have the monstrous rage giving +2/+0, and the monster roll. So that's 3. And then we have Ancestral Anger now, which I think adds 1. I think this is 4 counters plus 1. Yeah, that's 10. Or sorry, 9. We're done. Fletcher just died on turn 3. Yeah, I think this is.
Turn 3 was on the play, not good enough. Zach, and this is why this Boros Heroic deck can be so good. If your opponent doesn't have the right interaction, we talked about you got a bunch of sweepers in your deck, you're going to lose to this deck, right? You got a bunch of spot removal, you're going to be a little bit better, really put you in the pincer position there. So I believe since it's a feature match, we can just jump back to the main thing because this is a time-shifted feature. We can use some time magic.
We can just go straight into the game. I mean, that was a performance that you used to see in like Modern, right? Where you're talking about like the Gift Storm deck in Modern, where it's like, okay, you put this creature in play, and then if you don't kill it, you're just dead. That's exactly what just happened. You put a 2-mana creature in play. Oh, you didn't answer it? All right, well, you're dead. And I guess we're going to take a quick look at the deck list here before we dive right back into the match. I think we're going to start with Fletcher Johnson, who just took a big bonk on the nose. Let's take a quick look at the sideboard here. We got 2 copies of Mystical Dispute, 2 copies of Pitting Needle, 2 copies of Temporary Lockdown, 2 Thought Distortion, 2 Zakama, Primal Calamity, 1 Approach to the Second Sun, 1 Dragon Lord Dromoka, 1 Hope Tender, 1 Sunfall, and 1 Path of Peril. A little wishboard stuff going on. What do you like here?
Yeah, the Path to Peril stuff is like one of your few ways to actually interact. The problem is like it's requiring the Lotus Field to already be in play. So cards like Hope Tender are probably needed. Temporary Lockdown, very similar card. That one doesn't actually, it does need Lotus Field looking at the mana base. So you're going to need to have things go well. We're going to bring in those cards, trim on some of our slower cards. We're really looking for our Boreal Grazer, those sort of cards in order to kind of go quicker and not just insta-die in this matchup.
Yeah, I think you're definitely interested in interacting, especially based on what we saw. I mean, your combo involves Lotus Field. You need it in play anyway. And maybe you need to wait a turn to combo. Because there can be some really quick kills. Let's have a look at the Heroic deck, see if we have any ways to improve in this kind of combo setup that's a little lighter on interaction. Boros Heroic, we have 3 copies of Raiding Volley, 3 copies of Showdown of the Skulls, 2 Destroy Evil, 2 Adonto Vanguard, 2 Flowstone Infusion, 2 Justice Strike, and a God's Willing. Do you have anything you like here?
There are a couple cards you could bring in. Honestly, I kind of just like going fast again. Maybe that's a mistake. Yeah, just like maybe there's a world where you put in the Adonto's Vanguard to fight against cards like Path to Peril, but I think I'm just kind of like resubmit here.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But maybe Flowstone Infusion, like that's just a +2/+2, right? So like that might contribute to the go fast. Yeah, I mean, I think this speaks a lot to this being a good matchup based on what we saw game 1 with the kill on turn 3 and a lot of sideboard cards that respect removal spells. I would expect that there's not a lot of changes when there's no removal spells involved, and we're just looking to execute our game plan as quickly as possible. With that, let's get back down to the match and see exactly how that's going to play out. Fletcher being on the play, certainly I think going to help a lot, especially in this particular matchup. Zach, you see, like cheesing a little bit, happy with his ability to just kill Fletcher on turn 3. It looks like we might be on a low mulligan, is Fletcher. Sylvan Scrying among other cards, plenty of lands, no Lotus Field that I can see. Botanical Sanctum's the play. Over to Zach we go. Inspiring Vantage the play. Favorite Hoplite going to interplay. Back to Fletcher, who's going to play Boseiju. 2 mana, Sylvan Scrying. That finds Lotus Field. But again, no interaction to be seen in hand or otherwise, just not really part of the game plan. And Zach gets to untap with the first heroic creature, but Virtuoso is notably better than a lot of the other ones. This Ancestral Anger paired off.
Yeah, I think if we had Virtuoso, we'd see the attack for 1 and just wait, because Double Strike, believe it or not, is strong with pump spells. That's a free coaching lesson for everyone there. Yeah. And so, yeah, this is one of those things where this is a sign if you're Fletcher, like, okay, there's no Virtuoso. I don't have to really worry about that. It just came off.
Well, we did draw 2 cards, though. We cast Ancestral Anger and Defiant Strike, both draw cards, and we still got a hit for 5 across the line. So Fletcher, I mean, certainly happy to see no Virtuoso, but, you know, still under a little bit of hot water. If things like Reckless Rages and all that kind of stuff get involved, we can be just growing this up. Not Reckless Rage, I'm sorry. Monstrous Rage get involved. We can be growing this thing very, very quickly and end up just dying on turn 3 again anyway with just 3 really powerful spells. But getting to 15 is pretty tough on a 3-power creature to start this turn, as Lotus Field's going to interplay. No play prior to that for Fletcher, and it's going to be another Defiant Strike for Zach. 3rd counter coming for the Hoplite. Looks like Virtuoso was finally picked up, but we may not have another land.
Yeah, I think there might be a situation where we have a pathway, which is making things also awkward, because there's one land-like card in hand, I think, but it might also... Yeah, it is the pathway.
There we go. Played on white. And now we're playing another favorite Hoplite. Interestingly, moving away from the Virtuoso. That or I saw wrong, which is also very possible.
No, I think you were right. I think what's happening is Zach knows that there's a lot of 3-mana sweeper cards, and he's got Fletcher pretty low. And so he's like, hey, I think the way I lose is if you play something like Temporary Lockdown, like Path to Peril. You know, I'm going to just play these and hope that I can kill you quick enough, because if you don't play Thespian Stage to copy, you're going to be in not a great spot. And Fletcher Johnson giving the soul read there for Zach. You see his eyes looking to his? Just trying to figure out what do you got.
Well, I'll tell you what, Vizier of the Sands untapped. That's going to net a single mana. And it is Temporary Lockdown. Look at that. Shot called. And both favorite Hoplites going to end up underneath the Temporary Lockdown. Swept board for Zach. Can't stop that with any of the heroic spells, but like you mentioned, smartly kept that Virtuoso behind. That's going to be more than enough to really start to get the ball rolling again in a single card. Maybe a Dreadhorde Arcanist too? Yeah, okay.
This is a great refuel.
Oh, yeah. Back under the gun is Fletcher.
Oh!
And did we just pick up another one? My gosh, another lockdown. Oh, no. Wow. Zach played around the first one. How about second one?
That is going to be a tough one for sure. And I kind of like, I was going to say, I didn't like what Fletcher did was there. He kind of, you know, a little showsmanship, flipped the card onto the table, but that lets Zach know that, you know, it wasn't there beforehand. So Zach sort of called, but Fletcher just drew another copy. So who cares? Did you see Den of the Bugbear attacking for 4? Not bad.
Yeah, Den of the Bugbear able to punch a clock. I mean, it's a real clock, but much worse than any of the heroic creatures. And now Fletcher kind of getting this critical mass of mana to get started. Typically, you want to see them kind of start with at least 1, ideally 2, because you really want your Pour of the Pages to untap 2 kind of thing. So, you know, Thespian Stage, all that kind of stuff gets involved in the mix. Not really necessarily facing down lethal. And yeah, here comes a second Lotus Field. And that's kind of like the big sign that next turn is likely to involve. Oh, how about now? Maybe just now.
Yeah, it looks like Fletcher's worried about maybe like, and this is reasonable. I think, you know, if Zach just has Pump Spell, right, plus activate Den of the Bugbear, that could be lethal. And you can also be a spot with this Goblin, you know, just double pump, right? If you have 2 of that Monstrous Rage card, we could die. So I kind of like doing this. There's also, we're opening up some sick lines, Drake. We have Odawara in hand. We can bounce our own Temporary Lockdown. And if Zach spends the turn developing a creature, we can replay that Temporary Lockdown.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, your Pour of the Pages is going to be good here just to untap the mana no matter what. Like, you don't really need to have a for sure combo necessarily. Oh, but we're reaching for the man. I think it's time. It's go time. And you see Zach settling in a little bit. Yeah, okay, the mana's out. Here we go. Let's start getting this tracked. That'll be 5 mana, 1 blue floating. Here comes Pour over the Pages. We're going to float a green. So one's going to make blue, one's going to make green. Keeping a green in the pool. 3 cards coming. Got to discard 1, and we're untapping the Lotus field. So we're in full combo turns. I assume, I'm not a Lotus field expert, but assume we're looking for an Emergent Ultimatum at this point as we start to have some mana floating. Of course, can't do it. You can't cast it off just 2 Lotus fields. You're going to need to have some mana floating in order to make it happen.
Yeah, I can't quite make out his hand, but I think I see an Impulse. So that's going to help us find another untapped thing.
Yeah, if we have it now, I think there's a Vizier among the mix as well. So that would make it happen now. Because you can get another mana floating, and that's Emergent Ultimatum, which I believe in our current configuration is a check mark, as we're going to go ahead and cycle that right now. We'll see what mana we're going to have floating. I think it has to be blue. It is. Card coming. Lotus Field is untapped. 1 blue, 1 green. But now Emergent Ultimatum is castable. But it looks like we have Dark Petition instead. Kind of tough to make out, but I think that's a Dark Petition. And we're at Judge Call. Okay.
What is the Judge Call?
What could have happened? Maybe some main deck sideboard stuff?
It might also be we maybe accidentally saw an extra card or something when moving zones. Like something like that. It can also just be like how does this work exactly again? Like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, Fletcher at 3-0, obviously competent with the Lotus Field combo deck. Does not mean that there are not interactions that you have to think about, especially when you're talking about wishes and stuff like that with maximize acquisition from your sideboard, like how all that stuff's going to play out.
Ask judges. That's what I tell people. I ask judges all the time about stuff. Like, honestly, recently lost a win-in at a big invitational type thing because I didn't ask the judge. So I thought it was, and I should have just asked the judge a question, and doesn't hurt. Takes a second.
All right, well, Impulse looks at Grazer and another Impulse among others. Looks like we did select the Impulse. Oh, the old frame one, the old text has you shuffle. We're not doing that. That's not how that card works anymore. As Fletcher has picked up the Impulse. Doing a think now. So now it looks like we may have fizzled a little bit, but we have Dark Petition still. So the question is, what could Dark Petition get that can maybe matter this turn, or do we just need to wait until next turn where we can play another land? Not clear. Do we have another Impulse?
Nothing's ever clear when Lotus Field's involved.
Yeah. I recently saw some discourse about this deck, kind of claims saying it was underplayed simply because it is very complicated. And Beseju, who endures, is going to go, all right, our lands are spells. And Beseju Endure is going to pick off the Den of the Bugbear. We're going to Onawar the token and look, I need another turn. I need a lot of time, and I need you to not have anything. And so, yeah, we are fizzled.
Lotus Field has remained a tier 1 deck throughout all of Pioneer, and is simply not played due to the mistakes that you can make with the deck. Is that the copy paste? Did I do it right? Did I meme? Nice. I love to meme.
I think you're memeing. You're a content creator, Mason. I'm proud of you. As here is a hasty threat. Can't love to see that. And a monstrous rage. And there is that's willing. We had it all. Fletcher 3 separate times answered every creature Zach had. Sent the turn back. And Zach, every single turn, able to rebuild and present a kill. That is the power of this heroic deck, able to get a win over the Lotus Field combo deck. And I'll tell you what, that matchup looks pretty good for heroic.
That matchup looks nice. Unreal. An unreal situation. I don't even know what to say. I need a break. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back in just 2 or 3 minutes with some more Magic Gathering in round 5 here in Madison. Wow.